founder of Easy Trading Computers, which is the industry leader in high-powered trading computers for traders of all markets. He was introduced to trading the pits at, well, I'm going to look at my notes, at the age of 5. Yep, 5 years old.
Wow.
Holy smoke.
For the New York Stock Exchange, and he took Eddie Z to the pits with him. So he's been trading since he was a teenager and started on the floor of the NYMEX the very first Monday after he graduated high school.
Wow.
So this is somebody that knows what you need for a trading computer. Eddie, are you live yet?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you just
can.
fine. Thank you
All right.
for coming on and going through this. I know personally when I was trying to trade from just like my laptop, it doesn't work. So just tell us what we need to be doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me just go ahead and share my screen here. And let me know you guys can see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yep. Is your computer fast enough to trade with? That's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm just going to take it away here.
Okay.
Sounds great. Take care,
Okay.
Eddie.
So first of all, I just want to say thanks and just express a little gratitude here to Raleigh, Pat, Nikki, the whole gang at Westmark Trading for having us here at this event. We're always happy to be amongst such smart people. And I'm sure you guys are learning a lot so far at what I would call the Woodstock of trading education with all these bands, all these traders. Tom is certainly an interesting guy, to say the least. So thanks, Tom, for being on before me. It's interesting. We're truly living in a new world, and there are a lot more people trading the markets these days, and a lot more people are trading from home. And today's presentation is going to be about determining if your computer is fast enough to trade with, and more importantly, how to optimize your computer setup so you can be successful trading at home. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get started, gang, if you have questions, go ahead and type them into the question box, and hopefully my man Raleigh will gather them up, and towards the end, we'll go over as many of these as we can. So let's get started. Here's what we're going to go over. Well, first, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about Windows 7, which might sound a little old, but there are folks out there who are still using it, and there are some dangers and pitfalls in still using Windows 7. We are also going to talk about the biggest trading computer misconception and what that means for your trading. We're going to talk about and discuss, is your computer fast enough to trade with? So I'm going to show you with a demonstration exactly how to determine if your computer is truly fast enough to trade with. And there is an exact formula to go with it. We're going to go over that formula. And lastly, I'm going to give you a minimum technology requirements checklist so you can be a successful trader. Everything that we talk about today is in my guide, which is called The Complete Guide to Trading Computers. And there's a whole lot more that we didn't have time. We won't have time today because time is so limited to get into. So you will get a copy of this. Every single person in this room will be sent a complimentary copy tomorrow or the next day of this guide. So if you missed something today or something I said, I went too fast, I promise you it's in this complimentary guide. So just very, very quickly, I want to talk about the beginning, how I got started with computers. I don't know if this looks familiar to you, but I want to fly you back, bring you back in my time machine to about 1980. I was 11 years old and a friend of mine got an Apple II. So back in those days, that was the very, very beginning of the personal computer world. And so he got this Apple II and he brought me over to his house to see it. And he and his older brother had set this thing up in this amazing fashion. They had actually connected it to a telephone, and people were calling in one by one from all over the world, and they were leaving these long form text messages on this computer. And the computer was scrolling words across this black and white screen like you see right here. People were posting these messages on this computer, And this was something at the time that was called an electronic bulletin board. People could call in one by one, post these messages, and it just so happened the topics of the messages were about comic books. He had set up an electronic bulletin board that was based on comic books and comic characters. He called it the Bat Cave. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. An electronic bulletin board is something that we now call a website. So when I went home from his house that evening, I began a campaign to my parents to get me a computer for the holidays. I'm 11 years old. You know, what do we do when we're 11? Pretty interested in toys and technology. And so I campaigned to my parents, I need to have a computer. But what showed up under my tree was not an Apple II. It was something called a Commodore VIC-20. This poor machine had 2.5K of memory, and it actually hooked to the television set. And I set it up. I started to try to load programs. And the way you loaded programs, if you could see right here, you see this cassette player? This was the hard drive, a cassette player like we used to listen to music on. And these things would take 45 minutes just to load one program. And most of the time, it didn't even load the program properly. You just got error messages. And so, as you can imagine, I was so disappointed. It didn't do any of the things that my friend's computer did. I was super disappointed. And when my folks went to bed that night, I got a screwdriver out of Dad's toolbox and I pried this machine open, and I literally tried to figure out what the heck was wrong with it. Why was it so slow? Why didn't it do anything? Of course, I was 11. I didn't know what I was doing. But that was the moment where my passion and my interest for making computers bigger, stronger, and faster really came from. It was in that moment. And I've been a computer nerd ever since. Now, very quickly, I just want to tell you about my Wall Street experience and my trading experience. So I was pretty fortunate, like Pat said. My father was actually a floor trader on the New York Mercantile Exchange. And ever since I can remember, my dad would take me to work with him, even when I was like 5, 6 years old. But I started really getting interested around that same time, around 6th grade, 11 years old. My dad would take me to work with him, and I always liked going there with him because the energy on the Merc was awesome. Men carrying on, men behaving badly. And yes, it was 99% men. And the rules of behavior that applied on the floor of the Merc, which was in the World Trade Center, the old World Trade Center, the rules of behavior that applied at home, they did not apply on the exchange. So there was lots of cursing and carrying on, and it was just an insane experience. And as I got older and older, and I would go to work with him as a teenager, I started asking a lot of questions like, what's going on down here? How does this all work? So my father taught me how to draw point and figure charts with a pencil and graph paper. So we're talking like the early 80s. There were some computers on the floor, but they were very, very limited. And he explained to me that if I could learn certain formations, and he showed me the formations he used and how they helped him make money. And at that time, they were trading platinum and heating oil futures in the 80s. So charting was like such a cool thing for me. So I learned with pencil and graph paper. Right? So I became extremely interested in Wall Street. And what I decided to do was to work on that floor the minute I graduated high school. In fact, like the day after I graduated high school, I started on the floor as a clerk on the exchange. I worked every summer, every Christmas break, every spring break while I was in college and while I was in graduate school, until finally, when I graduated graduate school, I got drawn into becoming a stockbroker. So I didn't go down to the floor. I went to a brokerage firm, and I was a stockbroker for 17 years, starting from the early 90s all the way to the 2000s. And after that, just trading my money exclusively and building trading computers. So that's all I've really known career-wise is Wall Street. So kind of an interesting, funny story is my first trading computer that I built when I finally got my Series 7 license in the early 90s. So I started this firm, And this firm has this huge boardroom, and everybody's in a cubicle. And here's the thing, every broker had to share a single computer with the guy next to him. So here I am, my first day. They put me in a cubicle. The guy next to me has been there like 4 or 5 years. You know, it's kind of like this, these big boardrooms. You guys remember the movie Wall Street? Well, we didn't really have the green and black screens. They were color, but we had to share. Me and this guy next to me had to share this one screen. And this dude dominated like 85% of the screen with his symbols. And because I was the rookie, he gave me like 5 spots to put up 5 symbols, 5 stock symbols. So I was super frustrated. I went into the branch manager's office. I said to him, look, I can do surgery on this computer. I can add another screen and I'll be able to see more symbols. And he let me do it. So that was like my very first trading computer. And as my career grew, and you got to remember, this was the 90s. So being a stockbroker at that time was kind of like being a rock star. I don't know why. I was just in the right place at the right time. But it was a great, great career, a great business to be in. So I was always building these computers as the 90s was when the technology was advancing. So like when Windows 95 came out, it was much easier to build like a 4-monitor computer system. I was always making these things faster, stronger, being able to handle more and more monitors. So during my stockbroker career, the guys in the office, the other brokers, were always parading in and out of my office, checking out my setups, wanting me to build these very similar setups with multiple monitors. And I was that guy. I really couldn't find a better picture. I was that guy with the 4 giant old school CRTs on his desk. So I built a lot of these machines for these guys in my office, and I was always kept busy. My father retired from the exchange. I built him a multi-monitor computer, and all the buddies of his who retired from the floor and were now trading at home, I would build these trading computers. But it really wasn't until 2009 when a friend of mine pointed me to a Google search of the term trading computers. And I Googled this term and I looked at all the companies offering different computers in this area. And frankly, I was appalled at what I saw. I felt like traders like you and me were being taken advantage of in terms of their lack of knowledge. I mean, I get it. I know traders. They want a big, strong, fast machine, but they don't need to necessarily know what's going on under the hood. They just need to know that it does everything that it needs to do to access the markets. So I made it my mission at that point to educate traders on the technology in trader speak, in language that all traders can understand. Look, I get that you folks, you're not high-tech people. Most traders aren't super high-tech people. And so we try to break it down in the simplest terms so that you can get the most to access your window to the markets, because that's what your trading computer is. It's a window to the markets. And that's why I'm here today, to educate you guys. So very quickly, I just want to talk about Windows 7 very quickly and why you should worry about it a little bit if you happen to still use it. Now, my research shows about 45% of traders are still using Windows 7, and it's an issue. So back in January, Microsoft totally discontinued support and security patches for Windows 7. So now you might be thinking, you know, Microsoft, they've kind of tricked us over the years, right? If you remember Y2K, maybe I'm dating myself a little, but if you remember the Y2K nonsense, it turned out to be utterly nothing. Nothing happened. And if you remember back when they brought out a new operating system called Windows Vista to replace Windows XP, that was a disaster. And even more recently, when they first came out with Windows 8 to replace Windows 7, another disaster. So I know most of us don't think too highly of Microsoft these days. So when we hear an announcement like this, it's hard to take them seriously. But it is very serious. And let me explain quickly why it is serious. all of the operating systems over the years that Windows has come out with and Microsoft has come out with, they were designed with a very similar software architecture. So Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 10, they all have a very similar source code, a very similar architectural source code. And here's the problem. As new security patches come out now for Windows 10, hackers can take that patch code, the source code, reverse engineer it, and find the equivalent vulnerability inside of Windows 7 and then exploit it, because there's no equivalent securities patch for Windows 7. So what will happen as time goes by, the more people stay on Windows 7, the more vulnerable they'll become. So it is a big deal and actually becomes a bigger deal as time goes on. So all these vulnerabilities have the potential to give you malware, give you viruses, something called ransomware, if you've never heard of that. And of course, the biggest one is identity theft. Now, the one we see the most is ransomware. So we see people call into our tech support desk all the time, and we find that they've been downloading and getting ransomware quite a bit. It's a continuous flow for literally the past 7 or 8 years, and it's kind of scary. So somebody goes to like an adult-related website or some fishy gambling-related website or some just kind of off-color, weird website. They download something, and then all of a sudden the computer locks up and it demands a credit card to get unlocked, essentially holding your computer for ransom. And this is still going on in a big way. So these kinds of things can be infuriating if you're a trader, and it can be a big mess for you. So if you guys are on Windows 7, seriously, it's time to make a change. And if you're still on Windows 7, it's probably because your computer is pretty old. So I probably talked more about Windows 7 than I needed to, but seriously, it can be a big mistake if you still choose to run Windows 7. So why are trading computers needed? So people ask me all the time, can I just go down to Best Buy or Costco and buy a computer off the shelf? And that's a good question. But really what it boils down to is what I call the trader's biggest misconception, the number one misconception. What most traders don't understand is not realizing the sheer quantity of data that's pouring into your machine all at the same time. It's like a fire hose of real-time data. And as our internets get faster and faster, internet connections, it literally is a fire hose of data that's continuous when the market's open. It's not like when you go to a web page, you go to Amazon and you pull up a product. That's just a static page. There's no continuous flow of data. So let me give you an analogy so we can talk about this a little bit. So think about this. When you go to Netflix, whoops, that's wrong slide. When you go to Netflix and you go to start a movie, have you ever seen this? The little circle or spinny wheel? This is something called buffering. Buffering. What your computer is actually doing as it connects to Netflix or YouTube or some other service, any website that sometimes when you have to log in, there's a bit of a delay. What your computer is doing is it's taking in a giant stream of real-time data. So in the example of Netflix, it's taking in a giant real-time stream of high-definition stream of data, and your computer's processor, its main processor, is turning that data into the gorgeous high-definition picture we're all now used to seeing. The machine is actually gathering all this data, putting it all together into an image before it shows it to you. The machine wants to make sure it has enough data to show you a perfect picture, and that's called buffering. But here's where the problem comes when it comes to trading. We take in a very similar level of data, continuous level of data, fire hose level of data, similar to a high definition movie, but we do not have time to buffer that data. Your computer has to turn all that data into charts and into indicators in spot on real time. Your prices have to be spot on to the nanosecond. The same with your charts and indicators, because if your computer can't handle all the data that's coming in, a bottleneck will develop. And what's displayed on your screen will be slightly stale, slightly old. In other words, your pricing and your indicators could be a fraction of a second to even as much as several seconds old. So the prices you're seeing on the screen and your indicators that you're seeing on the screen are several seconds off. And so when you put your orders in to buy and sell, you're going to get order executions that don't match up to what you expected. This is something called slippage. Slippage is when you enter an order to buy a stock. So imagine you put in, it could be any security, but imagine you put a market order in to buy Apple at $358.20, and you get filled at $358.72 because the price that you saw on your screen, it is not a perfect match to where the market really is. That is called slippage. Let me show you another example. So I'm sure you guys have been watching CNBC lately, and everyone's working at home. So you see these folks here on CNBC, like a little panel of people all working from home, right? We've all seen this. They're all using the internet. And have you noticed when they have these panel discussions, there seems to be this little delay from when someone stops talking until the next guy starts talking, or sometimes they wind up talking on top of each other because they think it's their turn to speak. That's because of that little internet delay, the voice over IP delay. It's a signal processing issue. As traders, we cannot have any delay like that in our market data. This is the kind of delay, that little time delay I'm talking about. And that's what can happen with your trading computer if it's not fast enough and powerful enough to take on all that real-time data, turn it into your prices and your charts and your indicators in spot on real time. And that's the trader's biggest misconception, not realizing they're taking in so much data, this fire hose worth of data. And so again, when you put that market order in and you get filled at a price that you didn't expect, that is something called slippage. And it's infuriating when it happens. Has that ever happened to you? It's an awful, awful feeling. And if it's happened to you, you probably have done this, what this guy's doing. Have you ever yelled at your screen, maybe cursed at it? That's what happens when your machine's not powerful enough. And you know what? I've been trading for over 30 years. If you get triggered psychologically while you're trading because of a bad execution, unfortunately, the truth is, and I'm sure you guys are experienced traders in here, maybe some new traders in here, if you get triggered psychologically when you're trading, you tend to make a series of bad decisions, a cascade that can get out of control. The more pissed off you get, the worse your decision making. This is called the fight or flight response. So the last thing you need is your computer giving you a hard time. So there's so many other things that you need to be thinking about when you're trading. Your computer hardware really needs to be spot on. All right. So let's get to the part I'm sure you're all waiting for. Let's determine if your computer is fast enough to trade with. Is your computer fast enough to trade with? So the most important variable in determining if your computer is fast enough to trade with is your computer's processor, which is also known as a CPU, or the CPU stands for Central Processing Unit. So your processor, your CPU, they mean the same thing. Your processor, it is what takes in that giant fire hose, that giant stream of data, turns it into charts, graphs, and indicators in real time. It's the engine of the computer. So to figure out this formula of what makes a lightning fast trading computer, the most important variable in that formula is the processor. Again, the processor is the engine of the computer. So what you need to do is you need to find out what processor you have. and exactly what processor is in your current machine. By the way, I'm going to walk you through a demo. Feel free to try to figure this out while you're watching this webinar, okay? If I go a little too fast or you're not really following, I promise this is explained in the Complete Guide to Trading Computers, which you will all get in the next few days. So I am going to pull up Google here, and you guys should see my screen. Raleigh, are you there?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here and I do
Okay,
see your
good, good.
screen. Yep,
Can
yep.
you just confirm something for me? I'm going to click on this start button here. Did you see my start window pop up
Yes,
here? Okay, good,
absolutely. Yep.
good. I just wanted to make sure Zoom picked up my actual Windows controls. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So if you're in Windows 10, what you want to do is click the start button and just click it till it opens and start typing. You're going to type the words system information. Then you're going to click on the right up here, system information. And this is going to open this box right on your computer. Now, if you are still using Windows 7, it's a little bit different. You'll just click the start button, and right above the start button, there's a little search box. And you'll type in this exact same thing, system information. And then you'll see it populate above the search box, and just click on it. It should open this exact same window. So this is built into Windows, and what it is showing is all of your hardware, everything and even your software that's built into your system. Now, I'm going to warn you ahead of time, I am using an older machine I have here that I just use for webinars. It's not my main trading computer. Just giving that information right now. So the main thing we want to look for, so right here, this is the top line. Our OS is Microsoft Windows 10. We want to come down to about the 10th line where it says processor. Right here. Intel Core i7 4790K at 4 gigahertz. That is my processor. What you want to do is jot that down. You want to jot down your processor. Make sure you get all the numbers and letters. So I have the i7 4790K. So that whole i7-4790K, all those numbers and letters are really important. You might have, yours might say Advanced Micro Devices or AMD. It might say Intel Xeon. There's a number of things it might say besides the numbers and letters. So just jot that down for now. The next thing you want to do is just go down to probably about line 25, right under time zone, installed physical memory. So for me, I have 16 gigabytes of memory. Jot that down just so you have it handy. So hopefully everybody's got that. Raleigh, if you're there,
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions about that?
About what you're going through right now?
Yeah, just on how to find their processor. I just want to make sure
Let me see here. Oh, where is this in Windows 8?
it should be. I've never, you know what? I've never used Windows 8, but my guess is it's very similar to 7. So if you click the start button, there should be, I mean, this is Windows 10, but if you click your start button, there should be a little search box above the start button.
Sure.
And system information is on Windows 8. That part I know for sure. But
Sure.
I haven't heard Windows 8 in a while.
Yeah, no, but it looks like everybody is understanding what you're talking about with latency, and some people are just writing in exactly the kind of CPUs that they have, but it doesn't appear to be any issues with what you've got going on here.
Awesome. So the next thing we want to know, I'm going to close this window out. The next thing we want to know is, okay, how do we know if this processor is fast enough for trading? It's the engine of the computer. And so think of it, I like the analogy of a car engine. So the faster a car is, the more horsepower the car has. The more horsepower a car is in general, the faster the car is. So we want to go and look at how much horsepower our processors have. And the best place to do that is to go to a website called cpubenchmark.net. cpubenchmark, I didn't even spell it right, .net. So there it is up there. Before I click on it, I will let you write that down, cpubenchmark.net. So go ahead and load up this page. Now, what this website is, this is an independent company that's developed something called benchmark software. And people from all over the world have already downloaded and run this software on their computer. Essentially, what the software does is force the computer to run a whole series of formulas and algorithms, force the computer to come up with the solutions, and measure how fast it can come up with these solutions. The nice part about this site is that we don't actually have to run the software, because over 1 million people have already run their tests with all these different processors. And so we can just look at their database and see what what's called our benchmark score is. And the benchmark score essentially is how much horsepower you have. So what I'd like you to do is just scroll down here where it says search for your CPU model. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it will load this page here, and you can start typing in your processor. Now, I have the i7 4790K. You could put in the word Intel before that, because you can see down here, these are all listed with AMD in front of it. So there's AMD and Intel are what you're going to see. That's like 99% of them. So then I'm going to click Find CPU. So I go ahead and click Find CPU. Here's my processor. And by the way, it's very important. So you notice my processor right here, i7 4790K. Notice there's another processor called the i7 4790 with no K. It's a very important distinction, because the benchmark score for the K is 8,097. The benchmark score without the K is 7,200. The higher the number, the faster the processor. Now here's the deal, that number probably doesn't mean anything to you right now. I'm going to tell you what it means. The minimum benchmark score for trading is 12,000. 12,000. So this machine that I'm using is actually not fast enough to trade with anymore. It's underpowered for trading. So the most important thing I want you to realize is that the lower the number, the higher your risk of slippage or creating a bottleneck inside your machine that makes your charts and your indicators like a little bit stale. So the lower the number, the slower that machine is, and the higher the risk you're at. So the minimum benchmark score for trading is 12,000. The higher the number, the better you're going to be. The farther above 12,000 you are, the more time you have. In other words, the best way to say it is the more useful life you'll have out of your machine. So, I mean, there are actually some processors now that benchmark over 50,000. This is a brand new thing. This just came out in the last couple months. Some really high-end processors that benchmark over 50,000. Those machines should be good for 5 years, hopefully. Hopefully 5 years. Let's call it 3 to 5 years. I mean, you guys know how fast they put this technology on us. I mean, the phone, the useful life of your cell phone these days is, I mean, barely a year, which is pretty funny. So again, the minimum benchmark score for trading is 12,000. Now, the next most important variable in this formula, so the most heavily weighted variable in the formula for what makes a fast trading computer is the processor. The next most heavily weighted formula is your internet speed. So now we're going to go to a different website, which is called speedtest, one word, .net. Speedtest.net. So just go ahead and load that site. Now I have an ad blocking software running. Sometimes this page can be loaded up with all kinds of advertising. Just ignore all of that. So we're going to run this speed test. It's going to give us 3 data points that we want to pay attention to. So I'm just going to go ahead and click go. That's what we want. And before I do that, you can see I'm using AT&T. So I have AT&T fiber here. And it looks like it wants to connect to our nearest major node or closest large transfer switch server. That's like my first point of contact. So I'm going to click go, and it's going to give us 3 data points. The first data point it's going to give us is this thing called the ping, or the reaction time. Now the ping is your modem sending a signal to your closest major node, or your closest major transfer point, like the closest major server, and getting an echo back. And we want that ping to be less than 50 milliseconds. Think of when you make a phone call. The ping is how fast someone on the other end answers the phone and says hello. So it's not actually having the conversation back and forth. It's just that first point of contact. So we want to see this below 50. Get rid of this. This number here, ping, below 50 milliseconds. Anything above 50 milliseconds is going to create some latency, is going to create a delay, is going to create a problem while trading. The next most important figure is your download speed. Now my download speed is 907 megabits per second, which is darn good considering I pay for a gig of download speed. That's about right. The minimum download speed as a trader is 25 megabits per second. Now this really is the minimum. Don't cheap out. If you can get a gig and it costs you an extra 50 or 100 bucks a month, please get it. Please get it. It can make a huge difference in reducing any bottleneck or any latency. I see folks, they don't want to pay to jump from 25 megabits per second to 100 megabits per second because it costs them $34.99 a month. That's ridiculous. We're traders. This is a profession. You want to have the best tools you possibly can. When it comes to upload speed, the minimum upload speed, so the download speed is how fast, obviously, that you can take in information. The upload speed is how fast you can send out information. For example, your orders. The minimum upload speed is really only 5 megabits per second. In our case, it's 941 megabits per second. Again, higher is always better. Higher is always better. Okay. Let me just see where I am here. So those are the 2 biggest components when it comes to your trading computer. Those are the biggest one. There are other aspects to that formula as well, but those are the 2 most heavily weighted aspects. So just to go over, here's like a checklist for you of what you need. You need your benchmark score to be 12,000 or higher. The higher, the better. Anything under this, you're going to run into that issue we call slippage, which can cost you a lot of money, will frustrate the crap out of you. The second most important thing is the internet speed. Again, we want that ping to be less than 50 milliseconds. We want our download greater than 25 megabits per second. And look, I recognize that folks all over the country have access to different speeds. We want at least 25 megabits per second. If you can get a gig like I have, please get it. And then upload speed, we want a minimum of 5 megabits per second. Now RAM is your random access memory, and we want a minimum of 16 gigabytes or more, preferably. Now, if you're a trader like me, this aspect did not used to be so heavily weighted for me, but as time has gone on, the computers have gotten more robust. The software has become more robust. So if you are running, for example, Thinkorswim or Tastyworks or TradeStation or NinjaTrader. I have clients who are running 3, 4 different trading applications at the same time. The more things you are running at the same time, the more RAM you need. And I've noticed as time has gone on, we're opening more and more programs at the same time. If you're running Zoom, that can be pretty RAM intensive. So if you're running Zoom in a trading room, or you're running GoToWebinar, or any of these other resource hogs, plus you're running 2 other trading applications, it's going to use up a lot of RAM. So you want to make sure you have enough RAM. If you use up all of the RAM that's in your system, your computer's going to start writing that data to the hard drive, and your whole machine's going to bog down, and that's a huge issue. So 16 gigs is minimum. And as I mentioned before, we definitely want to run Windows 10. We definitely want to run Windows 10. Do not make the mistake of getting stuck on Windows 7. All right. In the interest of time, I mean, there's lots of other things we can talk about for traders, but I did put together a very special offer for everybody who came today, specifically for this event, for the Westmark Trading Group, and for Mastering Uncertainty. So if you guys want to go, I'm going to walk you through. We have a very special deal just for you guys. This is nowhere on our publicly facing site, which is easytradingcomputers.net. But if you go to westmarktrading.com/EZ, I've put together this very special deal for you guys. Now, this deal will expire a week from tomorrow. So it's a little countdown clock. So I put 2 deals here. Essentially, there's a desktop deal and a laptop deal. So the desktop deal is very cool. I put together one of our most popular computers. This machine will support up to 6 monitors, like a wall of monitors here. There's a video you can watch. You don't have to watch it now. But just a quick summary of what it is. So we call this machine the Super Trader GT Mega Display Package. This includes, speaking of processors, the brand new Intel Core i7-10700, which has a benchmark score of 17,750, so well above the 12,000 minimum. The second thing I'll point your attention to is the motherboard, which is made by Asus. But what's really cool about this motherboard is it's military grade. Now, why is that important as a trader? This machine has military grade components, and specifically those the components that level is protecting is against heat and vibration. Now, unless you live in California, maybe vibration isn't all that important for a desktop, but heat kills electronics. So this is military grade protected against heat. And I choose to have that in our computers because we warranty these machines for 5 years. No one else does that. So I have to make sure your machine is rock solid. It's not going to burn out. That's why we use these types of components. So this motherboard has military grade components. Also, we've already upgraded it to 32 gigs of RAM. And then it also comes with something called a solid state hard drive. Now, if your computer is more than 3 or 5 years old, you're probably using one of those old school standard hard drives. They're kind of big. And what they are, they actually have a spinning disc inside and a stylus. It's not that different from a record player. It's a much smaller version of a record player with a magnetic disc inside. And this thing spins around, and this little stylus reads and writes across the disc. And that is like a 35 or 40-year-old technology that up until just a few years ago, all computers came with. The problem with those old school hard drives is that they have moving parts. Those moving parts wear out. They're vulnerable to vibration. And if you have a laptop and you drop the laptop, that's the first thing that goes is that hard drive. And then you're pretty screwed. There's nothing you can do many times there's nothing you can do to recover from that. So we have put in something called a solid state hard drive. This is the latest technology. Think of your iPhone or your Android phone. How many times have you dropped that thing and it still works? And inside that phone, you've downloaded tons of apps, probably tons of music, your trading applications. So your phone actually has the equivalent of a solid state hard drive built into it. It's called flash memory chips. That's what a solid state hard drive is. It's a series of flash memory chips. And they can really take a beating. So especially when it comes to a laptop, it's an absolute must to have a solid state hard drive. But the thing is, it has no moving parts. So they last way longer and they're way more reliable than the old school hard drives. Your computer, when you turn your computer on, it will boot up like 25 to 50 times faster than those old school hard drives. Your trading applications will load nearly instantaneously. It makes everything just so much faster. And just very quickly, this machine comes with 6 monitor support. You can get it with or without the monitors. We've lowered it down multiple hundreds of dollars. I forget the exact amount. But with the 6 monitor support, it's $19.99. If you want the monitor package as well, it comes to $32.98. We can also do it with 4 monitor support and 4 monitor package. You can just select what configuration you want down here. You could click chat, my team's standing by if you have questions, you want to upgrade something. Now we also have the second offer. By the way, you could feel free to look through this page at your leisure. There's a whole bunch of bonuses that come with it. You get a wireless keyboard and mouse. You get a headset with a microphone for doing real cool events like Mastering Uncertainty. You get our deluxe cooling package and a whole bunch of different trading bonuses that are included at no additional cost. Secondly, we have a laptop, brand new model. It's called the Navigator 17.3-inch laptop. This one features Intel's new i7-10750H. This is a laptop processor that benchmarks at 13,000. Now, here's the thing with laptops. If you guys are on a laptop now and you pulled up your benchmark score, like 99% of the laptops on the market do not have a benchmark score over 12,000. They're optimized for miniaturization, not so much power and speed. And so most laptops really aren't fast enough to trade with. So we offer optimized laptops for traders, same types of thing. You got a solid state hard drive. This one has 16 gigs of RAM. A few things I just want to point your attention to, and then we can move on to some question and answer, is we do offer 3 ways to finance. Probably our least popular one is PayPal. They offer 0% for 6 months, but they don't approve a lot of people. The most popular one is something called, and by the way, if you click this need financing, this click here button, that will take you to the description of everything. We do offer something called Bread financing. The company is called Bread, and they will finance the computer over 24 months. So you can pay monthly, and their interest rates start as low as 9.99%. So you might save some money over a credit card, and they approve like 60 to 70% of people, which is pretty amazing. So even if your credit score is in the low 600s, they'll probably approve you. And then lastly, we do have another financing company called Progressive, which will give just about anybody credit as long as you have a cell phone and a checking account and you're breathing. But the only financing I would recommend you take from them, they have 0% for 3 months. Find another way to finance it if you know you're going to go over the 3 months with Progressive, because after that, their interest rate, in my opinion, is really unfair. But we do offer that for folks who want to keep their money in their trading account, at least over the near term. A couple of other quick things just to point your attention to. If you open an account with TradeStation, I don't work for TradeStation, but they do have a deal that if you open a new account for TradeStation, you tell them that you bought a computer from us, they will give you 20% of the commissions you pay on options or futures. They'll give you a 20% discount until the full price of your Easy Trading computer is completely paid off. I don't work for them. I really don't care what platform you use. I personally have just about everybody under the sun. I have a TradeStation account. I have TD Ameritrade Thinkorswim. I have a Fidelity Active Trader Pro. The reason, number one, is I don't like to have all my money at one firm. I mean, if you guys heard what went on at Robinhood a few weeks ago, people couldn't trade. They got locked out of their accounts. I once tried to open an account with Robinhood, and I tried to call to get some answers to some questions. They don't even have people. I think it's just a computer and one guy. No, there's no customer service. I would highly recommend you stay away from a firm like a Robinhood, by the way. And that's what I learned over the years is I don't want to keep all my eggs at one firm just in case something weird happens. Over the years, a couple of firms have gone bankrupt. So especially in Forex and in futures. So just be aware of that. We do on our desktops, we have a 5-year warranty, and with both desktops and laptops, we offer lifetime technical support. Lifetime. My guys, they speak English like Americans. They only do trading computers. They only cater to folks like you. So if you're like a lower tech person, you're not going to get routed to the other side of the planet with somebody who doesn't speak English exactly the same as we do, with a voice over IP delay. You're going to get routed to one of my guys here in the States. So that's what's included with every single machine.
That's great. That's super, Eddie. Man, you are, I'm taking a look at the clock here. We've got about 10 minutes to go, and there's a lot of questions that are here. So
okay.
Are you ready for some questions?
You didn't even let me get my last word out, but that's fine. That was my last word. That was my last word.
Questions and answers. You know what? I was just reading your mind, buddy. I have a very fast computer, thanks to you.
Awesome.
And I was able to see your screen ahead. Probably the number one question that came up is, what's the deal with Apple computers? I mean, you didn't talk much about that today.
Yeah.
Do traders use an Apple computer or a Mac? And some people have said they use their iPhones to trade. What are your thoughts there?
So I get this question about Apple computers all the time. And look, I get it. Apple's become very popular. Their Macs are very popular. They have a cult-like following, and they really do have a nice operating system. It's very intuitive to use, and it tends to be very stable. And sometimes people feel the iOS or the Apple operating system is more stable than the Windows environment, which was probably true many years ago, but really isn't true anymore. But here's the thing. And we can thank our buddies Steve Jobs and Tim Cook for this. Apple, over the years, their strategy has been to control all the hardware and all the software. They never really revealed their source code of their operating system to allow software manufacturers to design software for Apple computers. Mm-hmm. So you don't see like Ninja running on an Apple. You don't see TradeStation running on an Apple. The only way to access a brokerage account most of the time is through like a web-based application. So through Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer, and that can be slow and clunky. So what people do is they try to install kind of a hacked version of Windows on their Apple computer. And there are two ways to do that. One's called Boot Camp, and the other's called Parallels. And the problem is once you load up these versions of Windows, and then you install your trading applications, that machine is going to use up all of the resources on that computer, and the computer really bogs down. I get at least 2-3 calls a week. Well, I have Windows running on my Apple, but the machine is so slow. And so because it's using all the resources, it can't turn that real-time data flow into charts and indicators in real time. Bottom line is, it really just doesn't work. And so we can thank Steve Jobs for that, but that's just how it is. I have many customers who are using Apple to do their browsing, their email, their Facebook stuff, and they use a PC just for trading. And the funny thing about Apple and their equipment is that relative to the amount of processing power you get, I mean, even if you did make it work with trading applications, it's really overpriced compared to a PC in terms of the processing power you get. So it costs like $3,000 to get an upgraded enough Apple that has the benchmark score that's fast enough to trade with. And I don't know, I think that's another huge problem.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What other
So
questions?
other questions that came in here, because once again, we have a global reach here. There were some questions about, do you ship internationally?
So yes, we ship all over the world. I'm very happy to say. You just want to check on any like value-added taxes. Like we do sell to Europe, but I've noticed that a lot of folks over there, they tack on 18% in a value-added tax in a lot of countries, so that can be a problem. Just be aware of whatever duties. Canada is not so bad. We sell a lot to Australia. So we do ship all over the world. We've even sold computers to Kenya and to South Africa, which is pretty interesting. So we do
Sure.
ship internationally. Sometimes people ask me about, like, what about the voltage? Because in the United States,
Yeah, good question.
the power supplies, we're running at 110 volts here in most of North America, much of South America. We run at 110 volts, but the vast majority of the rest of the world, I think, is like at 220 or 240 volts.
And
But
50 cycle, I think, when they on top of that, right?
oh, yeah, probably. The power supplies we put in our desktops and also with the laptops, they auto detect the voltage, which is great because that only started happening in the last like 4 years. So it's really not an issue for us. All you'll need to do is just pick up that little tip. So on one end, it's got like the USA plug tip, and the other end has the proper socket tip for your electrical socket in your home. So yeah.
So some other, just going to rapid fire you here a little bit.
Sure.
A ton of questions about, so with regard to ransomware and things of that nature, do you supply antivirus software, or do you have recommendations as to what traders should use? And there was another one that was sort of similar, Eddie, maybe you could answer them both together. What's the impact of that real-time checking antivirus software on your computer, on your trading computer? Does that interfere with what's going on?
So that is an excellent question. I'll address the second question first. Real-time virus checking software, you do need to be a little bit careful of. So when Microsoft Windows actually comes with Windows Defender and Windows 10 specifically. In the past, I would have said you have to get a third-party virus protection program. I find that we have found, for the most part, the security and the virus protection and malware protection that's built into Windows 10 is actually pretty good, which I'm really surprised to say because I hated it in the past. And I always recommend people get antivirus software. I think because they were hacked so many times that they finally figured out they have to do it right,
Sure.
to keep customers. So the one that's built into Windows 10 is actually good enough. If you want to upgrade to a lot of software like Norton, for example,
right,
can block some of the trading stream, can block some of your real-time data. It's almost like your mother looking over your shoulder. It's too protective. So the best one I would recommend, I know we're running out of time. The best one I would recommend is called ESET, ESET, I think is probably the best antivirus software for traders. But again, it's not a requirement. If you want to have some kind of malware protection, the free version of Malwarebytes is very good. You do not want to have it checking 24/7. Like the paid version will run in the background. that also can become a nuisance. So you don't want that one either. You just want to, the free one will run when you manually run it. And if you do it once every 2 weeks or once a month, it's usually good enough. What was the first question again?
Well, the other, I think you answered them. One of them,
Okay.
what ships with your computer? Do you ship any? I think you're saying your computers come with Windows 10, and you're saying Windows
Yes.
10 Defender, it should be plenty. But if there's
Yes.
something else that they want, there's the free version of malware, and of course, ESET would be the
ESET.
consideration.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And let's see here. Bum, bum, bum. I think everything else you pretty much addressed, because there was a lot of question and answer about, well, you know, there's only so much your computer can do if your internet speed isn't quite that good,
Right.
and you know,
Yeah,
and I
that's a big issue for a lot of people is internet speed. And gang, it's really such an important variable. If you have the ability, so like where I live I'm in South Florida. If I'm fortunate, I have AT&T fiber here, which you guys saw runs at a gig. If you have access to another provider, so here we also have Xfinity from Comcast. I have both of them. And being that we get so many lightning storms in South Florida, I'm happy I have it. So if you're trading, having backup systems is really important. And I cover that in the Trading Computer Buyer's Guide, which I do recommend that you get, which you're going to get actually
right.
automatically in the next couple days. So I guess we'll wrap it up there. Just go to westmarktrading.com/EZ. You guys, Raleigh, Nikki, Pat, thank you guys so much for having me. I feel very privileged to be here amongst these geniuses. And you guys who are in this room are geniuses just for being here and wanting to make yourself smarter and educate yourself. A lot of folks out there these days, a lot of new traders out there. I think because sports, there's no sports to gamble on, no sports to watch.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, we really appreciate you being on for us. This was great today.
Awesome.
Wish you'd been around when my husband was buying like the wall of computer screens for whatever reason. But just make sure that when you are checking out Eddie's special, you can find it. It is under westmarktrading.com/EZ. And all of these will be on the recordings, and you'll receive all the offers at the end.